seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.
All right, so we're back with Ken and Mike on My Uncle's Escape to Alcatraz, and we're still diving into this story. We've been getting a lot of information about this, and we're still working on information about the uncles in South America. We're still doing research on that, and hopefully we'll have some more information about that soon. But while we do that, I think what we wanted to talk about today is that this resurgence of this story after 60 years and the impact that it has had on the American zeitgeist of, having such a seminal, escape happen in this place, this kind of, they call the Rock. And I think it's really interesting how, it's still in everybody's minds and, thoughts and feelings. And now with your book, it's kind of had a resurgence. And how does that make you guys feel? I mean, especially Ken, starting with you. I mean, this is your family history. It's just kind of, it's my family history is not that interesting. It's like, I mean, not on a historic level, maybe. I mean, it's interesting to the people that, our family, and, I've always been interested in my family, but your family history has some legitimate historical significance. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and how do you feel about all this resurgence and interest in it? Because like today, a perfect example, you're going on a speaking engagement to speak to the high school students. I mean, a new generation of people that are going to be learning about this story. So tell us what your thoughts are.
I've been really surprised over the years. Anytime I meet someone new and I happen to share with them, or the subject of Alcatraz come up, regardless of their age, most of them's right off the bat was, I know the story. And then at some point in time, I'll, tell them I'm the nephew of John and Clarence, and they just can't believe it. And they're like blown away. They're like, oh my gosh, I've heard this story all my life. I've always wanted to go to Alcatraz. I've gone to Alcatraz. I've heard the story. I would love to know more. Every single person that I meet is the exact same way, regardless of their age. They can be, I've had a kid as young as 10 ask me to be interviewed. I've had kids reach out to me wanting to do book reports on Alcatraz, wanting to get the firsthand account, from a relative. I've had people up in their 80s ask me about it. So anytime I've gone somewhere, every person that I've ever met, I've yet to meet anyone that I mention Alcatraz and they go, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like everyone knows the story. Well, at least they think they know the story. So.
It's pop culture, true crime. I mean, it's the biggest true crime story of the century, in history in the United States. Right. I mean, everybody knows about Alcatraz, and it's interesting because it's mysterious. There's an intrigue to it. Like, do they escape? Do they not escape? You want them to escape. You want them to survive. Right. So and plus your information is all new. So this is like revealing new information to an entirely new audience.
But now that's the surprising element to it to me also, is that most people only know either what they learned from watching the movie Escape from Alcatraz, or if they happen to have been to Alcatraz and they've listened to the headphones of the park rangers describing what happened. That's pretty much their limited knowledge of Alcatraz. But anytime I've shared with them, hey, there's way much more than that. And this is one of the reasons why we wrote this book, was to expose people to more of the truth, things that they didn't even realize happened in the Escape from Alcatraz. So that's That is one of the things that I really enjoyed sharing with people is these stories and the things that most people have never heard of.
I mean, Mike, to speak to that, I mean, he's talking about how people have only heard about what has been written and not the deep dive that you guys did. And also, I'd be curious to hear what that vocal tour in Alcatraz is now. And I would think they'd have to amend a couple things in that thing if they haven't updated it. But Mike, I mean, just from a writer's perspective, and you know, you've written a lot of books, and just knowing it from that aspect, we all know that, you know, history's constantly getting changed and we're finding new things about it. I mean, every day in articles are like, well, this is, you know, just the other day, you know, just the history of Jesus and the Shroud of Turin. They've discovered, you know, blood on the shroud, and now which kind of really validates Jesus's existence. I mean, that's just one of many historical things that, you know, people are discovering. But, you know, with Alcatraz, I mean, now we have more layers and more things to talk about because you guys have unearthed a bunch of new information about what happened to the brothers.
Well, when I've mentioned this several times on the podcast, when I first watched the 2015 documentary with Ken on the History Channel, I was already interested in Alcatraz. You know, I grew up in the Bay Area, so I'd been there before. I'd visited the prison back in the early 80s, and my family grew up in San Francisco, so I heard stories about Alcatraz from over the years, just from an observer's point of view. So the interest was there for me. When I watched the documentary, and I heard about, or I saw the photograph and his, his Uncle Alfred and his stint in prison and mysterious death, I thought, you know, there's more to this story, because I know, you know, it was a 2-hour documentary. It's not going to tell the whole story. They just don't have time. But I knew there was more story to tell, and I was very intrigued. I thought, I want to insert myself into the Alcatraz story and be a part of it, not knowing where it was going to lead. But and so when I reached out to Ken, and then after he agreed to partner with me to see where we can take the story, and then he started telling me all the other elements that I had no idea. I was like everyone else, like, I never knew that, I never heard that. That's amazing, that's incredible. And so I thought, you know, I want to make this thing happen. I want to be a part of this in a literary way, either through book form or, you know, some years ago we were trying to get a TV show produced, and we've worked on some scripts together to make that happen. But like you said, it's just the layers, you know, Mickey Cohen, the JFK brothers, Whitey Bulger, Fred Breezy. You know, we've talked about these people numerous times over the weeks, and all of their connections to the escape, both before and after their stint in Alcatraz, how his family or parts of his family had a direct involvement in what was happening, you know, the FBI involvement, the U.S. I mean, the story is so involved that many people have, when they've read the book, or we, like Ken and I, we kind of tell them little bits and pieces of the story, because, you know, it would take us hours and hours to tell them everything. So we can only kind of hit the high points when we converse with them. Invariably, many of them will say, you got to make this into a movie. You got to make this into a TV show. It's just this crazy story that has all these people and all these events involved in what happened. You know, it's like, this is so cinematic. You have to do something with it. And obviously we're pursuing that on our end, you know, through you, and trying to make that happen, because you obviously agree with us. Like, yeah, this has to be told in a cinematic form, and however that works out. But it's that kind of a story. It's not just 3 guys who escaped, like, oh, that's interesting, they made masks, they made a rubber raft, and they paddled their way to freedom. It's like way more involved. And so, you know, I am humbled and I'm honored to be a part of this, and that me, a lowly unknown writer, can be involved, as you said, one of the most amazing stories of the 20th century.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think
absolutely.
I think, you know, I don't think, you know, to me, when I look at it, there's so many peaks and valleys to this story, and it doesn't really kind of flatline. It's almost Greek in a way, like a Greek, you know, like Homer's Iliad. There's just like these journeys that go on, you know, it doesn't really end.
There's like natural foreshadowing.
Exactly.
It's insane.
It's just, you can't
It's like,
write this
yeah,
shit.
it's like, it's ridiculous. But
well, you know, it was a story that has always been meant to be told. It's tried to be, it's been tried to be told by people like Clint Eastwood and other people who have done either shows or other people who have written books, but they didn't really, where they missed the point or missed the mark to me is that they didn't have the backstory. They didn't have the, why did they get to Alcatraz? How, you know, and they didn't have the who helped them, you know, because they had to have help. I mean, that's just obvious, you know. And two, you know, where did they go afterwards? And so in this book, we bring all three of those points to bear. And I mean, not only do we bring it to bear, we get evidence on each of those points as to it being true. So, you know, anyone who's wanting to know the real story about, and that's why I always tell people, if you want to know the real story about what happened at Alcatraz to those three men, you buy this book, and I promise you will understand it.
Yeah, no, you guys go into a lot of detail, and you get in, and you really kind of feel for the characters. You really kind of get to know and, you know, love your family and John and Clarence and, you know, even Fred Breezy, who, you know, later on in life became kind of a shadowy, kind of sleazy type of guy. It just doesn't. But even that, but it's kind of crazy how it all kind of came together. I mean, to me, the funniest story is when, you know, Fred Breezy's father, you know, got him to get him his pilot's license just to get away from your brothers, and that's what. Right. That was the Lynch point. That was the Lynch point. That was like the key thing, that skill that he got that basically turned him into a drug runner. Flying drugs for Mickey Cohen, and that is the seminal kind of, you know, linchpin to how they ended up in Alcatraz.
Well, and just all of the events in their life, like the, you know, Fred Breezy and the brothers, you know, playing at the river, getting towed by boats. I mean, you know, not even thinking that, oh, later in life this is going to become very important to us, and then we'll actually save our lives one day, or you know, the fact that they used to put dummy heads in their beds as kids to sneak out of the house, you know, things like that. And then learning how to make stuff out of just nothing, you know, not having anything. So they learned to create tools, and they learned to create bicycles. They built their own bicycles or their own car. They just learned how to survive in this world. And all of those elements came to bear at one time, and that was during this escape.
Yeah.
Or John's, you know, artistic talents that at a young age, you know, he painted as a young man, just out of enjoyment. He just liked to paint. So he had obviously a creative side to himself that obviously was integral to the escape, as far as the dummy heads and the false grills.
That's what I'm saying. There's all this natural foreshadowing. It's like their whole life was leading up to this moment. I mean, they swam the San Francisco Bay, Tampa Bay. It's the same. It's treacherous. I mean, their artistic ability, their escape artist ability from a young age. I mean, all of it. It's just, and going to Alcatraz and seeing it before they were actually in it. That to me was like amazing.
That was one of the things when we were pitching this to a network last week. Was one of the things that was, you know, it was the only thing we got a smile out of that. The fact that it was interesting. So it was, and so, because it's fantastic. I mean, you can't make this shit up.
No,
I mean,
it's like, you know how you look at your life and you're like, there's these little things that happen along the way where it leads you a certain direction, but it's like every single thing that happened to them just guided them along this path to escape from the most difficult prison in the world. It's insane. I mean, and then to go on and live.
I neglected to mention was Clarence. You know, when he was younger, he used to cut his siblings' hair. And then he became the barber, or one of the barbers at Alcatraz. And, that hair that he, smuggled out of the barber shop made the dummy heads realistic. Without the hair, they would have been spotted as fakes, right away. But that, again, just that little thing became a huge issue as far as, element as far as their ability to escape and fool the guards.
Absolutely. I mean, so Mike, at what age did you first go to Alcatraz?
I believe it was 1981. So I was 19 at the time. So, young or late teens.
Was it with your family? Was it a school trip? And I would imagine there's a lot of school trips that go there.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. I was out of high school. I was in community college at the time. I was dating a girl, and not my wife, unfortunately, but anyway. And there was another couple. There was the four of us. We went to San Francisco and spent the day there, seeing the town, going out to dinner. And one of the things that we wanted to see, of course, was Alcatraz and visit the prison. And it's like, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be a lot of fun. It's one of the things that, when you live in the Bay Area, you got to go see it. It's, kind of like one of the things that's required for living here. And when you're on the boat and you're driving or moving toward the island, it's sort of ominous. Sometimes the island's in the fog, and sometimes it's a clear day. Each day is different there. And it's literally just sitting in the middle of the bay. It's known as the Rock for a reason, because it's on a rocky island. It just sits, the prison sits on top of it. And it's very ominous looking, it's very forbidding, when you, even from a distance, you can tell that's a prison. You can see the barred windows, the cement structure. It looks very imposing. And, you go to the backside of the island, and you go to the dock, and you're standing, on the pier, and you're looking at the prison and just thinking, like, what was this like for the inmates who came here, not for fun or recreation or to explore, but this is their new home for who knows how many years, thinking, am I going to get out of here? Is there any way to escape? Because, the prison has a giant moat around it. If you can somehow get out of the prison and in a bid to escape, well, then what do? You get to the water, you got 1.5 miles to San Francisco. You got a couple of miles to Angel Island. You can try to swim for it if you want, but that's treacherous. We've discussed that numerous times, how chances are you're not going to make it if you try to swim. So what other options do you have? The only other option you have is a boat. That's it. Swimming or a boat, or some kind of flotation device.
Yeah.
But there's no helicopter come to get you out of the yard. It's not going to happen.
No.
So everything about the prison says you have no chance of escape. You can't get out. Don't even try. Just make the best of it while you're here, and hopefully you'll get paroled and get out that way. But the chances of you making it through escape is near impossible. So don't even bother. So and the other thing about the prison that really surprised me when I visited there is how small it is. It's not a large prison.
No.
We talked before, it held, at any given time, 250, 260 inmates at any given time. And each of them had their own cell, and that's it. And then you had I think it's like, one guard for every 3 inmates. Very high ratio of guards to prisoners. And so it was very easy for the guards to keep watch of the inmates at all times because it was so small. Some prisons have several thousand inmates, and it's much easier to blend in, to work on an escape plan, to go into places unnoticed because there's so many inmates to watch. Whereas Alcatraz, that was not as much of a problem, and they kept the prison level very low, which is one of the reasons why it closed later, because it was just too expensive to keep it open, because everything had to be brought to the island, all the food, all the water, medicines, materials, equipment, guards, they shuttled back and forth to the island. It just was a very expensive prison to keep operating.
Yeah, didn't they also have their own? They had to have their own power and all their own stuff, right? I would imagine they.
Yeah, they had generators on the island. That's how they kept it going. There was no power cable running from San Francisco.
That's interesting. Ken, how old were you when you first went to Alcatraz?
Oh my gosh, my first time ever going was like in 2008.
Wow.
So I was in my late 40s, early 50s, maybe at that time, pretty close to it. First time I ever went, I just kind of went over there on my own. I was actually out for to do some. I believe I was out at a mill for my company, and I took the time and went over. Grabbed a boat and went over to Alcatraz and just kind of walked around. I agree with Mike. First time I ever saw it, I thought, "Gosh, this is a lot smaller than what I anticipated." And looking at the cells, the very first time I ever went into a cell, John's cell, it was just amazing how I could stick my arms from one side to the other and touch both sides of the wall. And I was like, okay, I would definitely not want to stay here. I felt very claustrophobic, just like, oh my gosh, I'm like in this little box.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I can understand why they would want to leave.
Yeah. Did you feel any? And I know you wanted to ask this. Go ahead, ask the question. Go ahead, ask the question.
Was it haunted? When I first went, I don't know. There's a creepy energy there. It's a heavy energy. At least I felt that.
It is a weird place to be at. I will say that. And I've been there in the middle of the night. So is Mike, doing filming early in the morning. And it is a weird place to be there when there's no public there, just you and a few other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of eerie, I'm sure there was some wild stuff that went on there that people probably don't realize, because it was a military prison at one point in time too.
Yeah.
So it's just I'm sure there was a lot of things. What really was surprising to me too was me being a person that had swam from Alcatraz to the mainland, and even doing the reenactment of the boat being pulled or the raft being pulled by a boat. Every time I get in that water around that place, it's just so eerie to me. Just almost kind of like, okay, I'm doing something that my uncles did, 50, 60 years ago, and I'm kind of reenacting this exact same scenario. So very kind of weird feeling sometimes.
That's got to be eerie, because it is. It's like you have this genetic memory with your family, that your relatives, and
right.
in that water.
Going through the hole in the back of the cell. I went through John's hole. The park ranger at that time, I believe it was Cantwell. I don't know if he was challenging me. He just said, hey, do you think you could go through it? And I said, sure, I could. And I got down, and because I kind of realized how they did it, going in backwards and taking one arm, and you go through first, and I was able to get through it. But as I did it, I kept going, gosh, can you not imagine how my uncle felt when he was going through it that night?
Right.
Yeah.
Probably his heart beating 90 miles an hour.
Oh my God.
Just the adrenaline flowing, oh my gosh. Even though he had probably done it at least a dozen times prior to that last time.
Oh, yeah, more than a dozen times.
Never coming back to this cell, so it was like saying goodbye.
Wow. I didn't know you went through the hole. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I went through the hole.
So did you trace their steps?
I didn't. They didn't let me climb the drain or the pipe to the top. I did go to the top using a ladder. I think they have a set of stairs that you can go up to the top. And I did go up to the top and look. Didn't go onto the roof, but now I did challenge them. I said, let me do this, and I'll show you it can be done. Even to the point that whenever we were going to do the raft pull with Josh Gates, I even told Josh, I said, let's go and put the raft up under the docks and let the boat pull us from there. And he was like, no, we'll get in trouble. I was like, who cares? We're supposed to be trying to escape from Alcatraz. We're convicts. We don't care.
Exactly. Why not do a full recreation?
Exactly.
That's
heck, I would have done it at night if they would have let us.
Has anybody else from your family been to Alcatraz?
My mom, her sister, and I believe my mom and Uncle Man, along with two other people, went to Alcatraz in like the early 2000 with Don Denevy, when that book Riddle of the Rock came out. They went with him out there. Other than that, no, Now I'm the only relative that I know of that's ever gotten into the water and done any type of activity, swam from it, and the recreation of the boat pool. So I definitely know that I'm the only one that's ever done that.
I just think it's hilarious that they have a triathlon basically chronicling what your uncles did. That's
brave people. That is a scary swim.
What can you remember of what your mom told you, what her experience was like when she visited there? Did she express anything to you?
She was, I believe, if I remember, she did talk about how small John and Clarence's cell was. She really felt bad for them that they were put into that kind of environment. I mean, that's with brothers. It's kind of like seeing one of your sister or your brother, in some little bitty cage that they're kept in, because they were pretty much kept in their cell most of the time. And so, she definitely felt pity for them that they had gotten to that point in their life, and they were looking at a long prison sentence. So they, I can imagine how she felt when she saw it for the first time.
Yeah, it probably was emotional for her.
I believe it was, and from my understanding, that was the very first time that Uncle Dan had ever been to Alcatraz, which was very interesting, being as now that we learn how involved he was in the escape planning piece of it. So I'm sure he walked home to that island probably thinking, you thought you could hold my brothers, and we proved you wrong. So
I'm sure he had that. There is a certain amount, since as much as he knew and as much as he was involved with, I think we just got the tip of the iceberg. You guys just got the tip of the iceberg of how much he was involved. I think he was probably way more involved than we all, that you have proof of. It sounds like it.
Yeah, I really believe for some reason that there's probably more in those letters that the FBI still has in their possession, because these would be letters that the family wrote to them. People like Alfred, people like Uncle Man would have written them, and there's no telling what they said in those letters. They could have easily said, "We had a visit from one of your friends," or there's no telling what they wrote in those letters. And maybe that's the reason why the FBI doesn't want the family or anyone else to have these letters back, is because we would then have even more proof that something very strange happened.
Which is, like we said before, and when we had Stewart Fillmore on, he says, is ridiculous. At this point, why wouldn't you just let everything out? I wonder if do you think because they were always speaking in codes, they always had their own little language. Do you think there's any kind of hidden codes in those letters? Because
I believe so. And the reason why I believe that is true is that I think I mentioned it one time before in one of these podcasts, one of these episodes, that all the letters that were written to Alfred from the brothers were returned after he died to his ex-wife, Jeanette, who was, like I said, she was on the way down to Ruskin to give them back, to go give them to the family, because she felt like the family needed to have them since she was no longer married to Alfred. And like I said, she pulls into a rest stop to go to the restroom, and someone breaks into her car, into the trunk, and that's the only thing they took was the possessions of Alfred that the prison had sent her. I mean, all the letters, anything that had to do with Alfred got stolen. Everything else in her car was left just like it was.
What year was this?
Let's see. Alfred died in 1964, so it had to be in 1964, sometimes in 1964. My mom has told me the story, and I actually heard it out of Jeanette's own mouth. Being around her with the family. I mean, she's told the story many times, and all of the family know it. I mean, we have all of the letters that John and Clarence and Alfred wrote to the family, but none of the letters that they wrote, that the family wrote to them, or any of the letters that were written between John, Clarence, and Alfred. So, we do know that Alfred had knowledge prior to the escape that the escape was that they were planning an escape. So, the code that they used was definitely there in one of those letters.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, obviously somebody was following her, and to steal just that out of the car, it's like obvious, like this is something connected to the Alcatraz case. Why would they take that? Why would a random person isn't going to just take that?
Well, I mean,
no value in it to them.
What is the value in them keeping the letters today?
Well, I think
what is in those letters that they don't want us to see?
Exactly. Obviously, there's something, or they wouldn't. They would have released them to you. It's always been interesting to me, the horse that you talk about. Alfred had mentioned. Can we talk about that horse? For some reason, the horse is bothering me, and a lot of people have been asking me about that horse, and I'm like, I wanted to talk about that story for a second. Can you elaborate on how that horse came about?
Sure. So after Alfred was transferred in 1963, I believe it was October of 63, he was transferred from the Atlanta Penitentiary to Kilby State Prison in Alabama. It's so strange as to why he went to this prison. He was given a chance to go to any other prison by the federal government because he wasn't actually serving his state time yet. But for whatever reason, that's just where he chose to go. Not long after he was there, Uncle Man comes to visit him in November of 63, the very first part of November. He undoubtedly had gotten in the mail this leather. It's not like a pouch. It's a leather picture of a horse, but it's bound together. So there's two sides. There's the front side and the back side, and you can see the stitching as it went all the way around it. And the horse it's a leather picture of a horse. There are like there's two, maybe three lines, ink lines that are coming off of the horse's mouth. Well, when Uncle Man goes to visit him in Kilby Prison, now he's close enough that they can, go see him regularly. Uncle Man and Alfred excuse themselves to the bathroom. And Alfred tells Uncle Man, he said, I've just gotten contact from our brothers, and I know where they're at. And if I make parole, I'm going to join them. And so, Uncle Man, of course, tells the family, he didn't really kind of understand what he was talking about. Alfred didn't show him that horse picture at that time. All he did was just tell him. And then in December of it's Christmas time in 63, my mom, my dad, myself, and my sister go to see Alfred at Kilby Prison. My mom cooked a Christmas dinner for him.
Yep.
And we're out at a picnic table outside. Believe this or not, it's a picnic table outside of the prison. So we're outside of the actual walls of the prison, and we're sitting at this picnic table. Well, undoubtedly, he brought the leather horse picture out with him. And after he got through having his Christmas dinner with my parents, he tells my mom and my dad, he said, I've had contact with our brothers. He's looking at my mom, and I know where they're at, and I'm up for a parole hearing at the end of January. And if I make it, I'm going to join them. I know exactly where they're at. And he gives my mom this horse picture. He said,
how did he get it? Did it come through the mail?
It was mailed to him, and I'm sure it came in the mail. No one ever opened it up. They never opened up the stitching. But my mom said when he handed it to her, part of the stitching was missing, and where he had opened it up, and he said there was a message in there that you had to urinate on to read, and then he destroyed it.
What?
So yes. I mean, this is whatever it was. It wasn't probably something that would make sense to anyone if they had found the letter, like a guard. But Alfred was a trustee.
So it was. What kind of ink? I just want to stop you there for a minute, because I've never heard that before. I've heard of invisible ink. Yes. I've heard of like that. I've never heard of invisible ink that you'd have to use urine to kind of make it appear.
Yes, that really truly does happen. I mean, that has happened before. It is a process that they write on, and then using ammonia, which urine has ammonia in it, right?
Got
So
it.
that's the reason why he would urinate on these letters, and it would reveal whatever code, whatever message was there, and then he flushed it down the toilet.
That to me is like that now, because me the horse initially, and maybe we didn't cover this in the past, because we definitely didn't cover the urination thing and the fact that there was a noise, but that it always, I thought the horse was like almost just kind of it was a symbol, but there was no message inside. It was just some sort of totem symbol to kind of alert them, the family and Alfred,
Right.
that they had made it, and that by the horse and the designation of the type of horse in that region in Mexico would kind of give them a clue that they had made it to at least Mexico at that point. But the fact that stitching that you're telling us that was, there was separated there, and that there was an actual note inside there, and that it came through the mail. I mean, I would imagine it wasn't mailed from Mexico to them directly. I'm sure it was, they probably sent it to someone in the States and then mailed it to there. Because I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just, but that's pretty significant. And that's, the level of, that just kind of brings the intelligence level of your uncles to like a new level, at the level of spycraft that they had to do once they, both inside prison and then outside prison, that they were always conscious of, obviously their message being found out, and but their desire to communicate with their family members was so strong that they went to such crazy extents to keep their messages private, but let their family know where they were. So it's just amazing.
And go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, we were talking a little bit earlier about the letters that they wrote from prison and that they wrote in code. And so I brought up one of the letters that Clarence wrote from Alcatraz to his mother, Ken's grandmother. And it was dated on May 6, 62. So this is about a month before the escape. And he says something very interesting in the letter. I'll just read it real quick. He's talking about Alfred, about possibly making parole. He says, I think it would have been better off to go back to Florida where he could be closer to home. I know that I would have anyway. Maybe he will get back to one way or the other. It would be something on the way to him getting out altogether. I don't know just how much chance there is of me and John getting any closer to home. But we have heard they may close this place down and move us to a place in Illinois. But it's interesting that 1 month before the escape, Clarence says, we don't know, John and me, we don't know if we're going to make it home. And I think that could be, you can look into that and say that's code to Uncle Man, because I'm sure when John and Clarence wrote letters to home, all the family read it. Everybody was sharing the letters. They all got to read it. So I think Uncle Man would see that and say, they're saying 1 month before the escape, we're not sure about our chances of getting home, meaning we're not coming back.
And something I need to send to you, Rob and Cindy, that you can share on this podcast is, I think I've sent you a photo of the horse picture.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we got a black and white one, and we have a color one.
Well, something that I don't think I've ever shared with y'all. I might have shared it with Mike, I'm not sure. But Clarence was a fantastic leather designer. When he was in several other prisons, state prisons in Florida, he made a billfold for his grandmother, or for my grandmother, his mom, and it's made out of leather, and it's got the same style stitching that's on that horse leather. He also made her a purse that's totally made out of leather, and I mean, he was very skilled at working with leather. So whether or not, whenever that showed up at the prison and Alfred recognized it, or whether or not that was something that he recognized from a prior visit to Mexico, something about that showing up not only let him know it came from his brothers, but it also let him know he knew exactly where they were at. Whether or not it was the horse that was on there and he recognized hey, this is something from Mexico. He had seen it before, or whether or not he recognized the handiwork that Clarence might have actually created it. So one of the two.
See, I was under the impression that when I saw that, and maybe I didn't read it clearly in the book, and that was almost like kind of like just some sort of tourist thing that they picked up from that region to kind of send to them to kind of give them a bat signal that they had made it to where they needed to go. I had no idea that, Clarence fashioned that out of leather and did all, like I said, we're just learning, right? You and I are just learning about the whole stitching and the letter and the urination, the secret message. I mean, that just takes it to a whole nother level.
Well, we do know, like I said, I've got some photos I can send to you of the wallet and the purse that he made in prison. And I believe he was in one of the Florida state prisons when he made it. It could have been Rayford. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know he was very talented when it came to creating stuff out of leather. I mean, you look at this purse and you would think it was professionally made. I mean, it's awesome looking.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just a testament to the level of tenacity and, ingenuity that they both had. I mean, I think, Ken, you and Mike, you could take your book and use that as almost like a guide point for people's lives and how never to give up.
True.
I mean, you could use it as some sort of
motivational speaking.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say before. It's like when you read this book and you look at all the points in their life where there was adversity and how they overcame adversity, it is a testament to the spirit, and it's an emotional journey when you're reading this book. That's what I loved about it, because you're rooting for them. You want them to succeed because you've watched them overcome adversity after adversity after adversity. And that's the challenges of life. And they persevered and they were creative.
Yes.
And they found, the obstacle is the way. That to me, it was really the emotional strings for me in that book was just their journey and following it with them. I never knew anything about their journey. I just knew that these were two guys who tried to escape from Alcatraz and didn't make it, because that's what I was told when I went to Alcatraz when I was like 12. So I didn't know, I had no idea. And even when I went to college in Marin County, I went back when I was like 17, when I was a freshman. And, we would ask all these questions like, well, what happened to them? And everybody would just be like, nope, they died. They're gone. I'm like, well, where are they? Like, didn't you ever find them? And nope. But there was no wiggle room for any other theory. It was was the theory and that was it. So when I read the book, it was just like, it just was overwhelming because I had no idea any of these things. So,
and I think that's one of the reasons we were talking at the beginning of, why after 60 plus years of the escape, does it still hold our attention? That we still talk about it. Actually, just yesterday, Ken and I got an email from the publisher of the book that a producer reached out to him and said, hey, saw the book, love the story. We want to talk with you about producing a documentary based on your book. Can we talk? And I emailed him back and said, sorry, we signed a deal with you guys. So
yay.
Wish we could, but we can't. So, but so even yesterday, a producer saying, hey, love the story. Let's talk. And we've had multiple requests that our publisher sends to us from people reaching out to them saying, we want to do something with you. This is a great story. So why after 60 years are producers and the public at large still completely fascinated with the story? And I think, Cindy, you made the point. It's like, it's the mystery. It's the unknown. What really happened? Did they make it? Did they not make it? Well, if they didn't make it, what happened? If they did make it, what happened? How did they get out? Where did they go? Are they still alive today? And that's the thing that holds the interest, that, people love a good mystery and they want to try to solve it. And there are a lot of, amateur sleuths out there who are poring over the information, coming up with their own ideas. Some of them have websites that are Alcatraz, of just like, hey, let's talk about Alcatraz and the escape and look at photographs.
Facebook groups. I mean, I post this episodes
Oh my God.
always at like 3 or 4 Alcatraz devoted Facebook groups, and I'm sure if you go on Reddit, there's probably even more.
We get so many emails, asking all these questions. We love this. That's why one week we'll do all the questions because there's so many.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you couldn't, like I said, if you're writing a book about a prison escape, I think you would write a compelling book, but I don't think you could come up with all of this. I mean, this, like you're saying, fact is stranger than fiction. I mean, there's just too many levels of, you wouldn't believe it,
Well, to me, I would love to see us do an episode one time where we have people who can call in and ask questions.
Yeah.
Almost something kind of a live.
We can do that.
They can send the questions to you, and Mike and I can answer them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
we can do a live YouTube, or we can do a Q&A. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day because there's so many people that have so many questions. It'd be great to have them ask.
That'd be fun. I'd enjoy that.
Oh, I love to have questions.
I know.
Love it. I mean, I am definitely one of these kind that I love a good debate, and I feel so confident in what we have discovered that I will put it up against anyone who wants to debate it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, you had the gentleman who wrote the book, the first book, what was the title of it again? I can't remember.
It was Riddle of the Rock.
Riddle of the Rock. Okay, so you have him. So you have like a standard kind of author doing research and writing this, but here you have both of you where you can have the personal experience and family history and all the documentation and the letters, and you have direct testimony from your mother and her family members, and what Uncle Man has said and all that stuff, and you combine that with Mike's all the research on the history of it and digging down for all the other kind of the records and the articles and especially because he's from the San Francisco area, and you have combined that, and it just doesn't it doesn't compete. I don't see how it competes with any other kind of book that's ever been written, because you don't have those two, because normally like an author who's in a book would probably just interview you, Ken, and take your interview and like that.
Right.
But the fact that you combined efforts and you really dug in and did this amazing research about this, and that's what the book really translates to when you read it. It's almost like you're right, almost like sometimes you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is like an informational article, and then it kind of transforms into almost like a novel, and then it goes between that and like it goes between those two elements to it, where it reads both like a novel, and then I was like, all right, then it's information, it's combined together.
It's very Capote-esque.
Yes.
It's very Capote-esque.
That's a great way to put
it's literary nonfiction, and I love that. That's what drew me in, because when you're reading nonfiction, it can be a lot of research, it can be boring, but you guys are great writers. I told you this from the beginning. I mean, it's very it sucks you in, and it's lyrical, and it has that Capote-esque feel to it.
Go ahead, Mike.
One of the things that I have thought about from time to time, especially as we've done the podcast, and we're going over, we were going over the chapters and the information in each chapter, is actually how much information there was to get. I mean, obviously you have to dig, you have to look and search and get little bits and pieces and try to make a picture out of an incomplete, puzzle. But, from their youth until, their time in Brazil, how much of a trail there actually is to follow, from very different people who didn't know each other, different sources that were very independent of each other, and you put them together. And then, as Ken has said, it's like the picture is formed. You see the whole picture when you tell the whole story, because the whole story has to be told to make it authentic. If you only tell part of the story, like if we just started with Alcatraz, and we, that's where the book begins, and they're doing all these things. It's like, well, no, they would never do that. No, how would they know to do that? And you would really question these two farmers from Florida. How would they have the ability and knowledge to do such and such?
Well, I think that's what the problem was with the original film. They didn't have that knowledge. They didn't have that inside knowledge of who these men were, and those threads of their personality and how they were as children. It weaves the tapestry of their life, which is why they ended up doing the things that they did. So you can understand that arc. Without having that inner knowledge of who these guys were, you would be like, they couldn't have done this. They're just these guys from Florida. It had to be Frank Morris. He had to be the brains behind this, because he didn't know. They didn't have that information.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand how they learned from an early age how to improvise, adapt, and overcome. It's like, you just drop into the prison in that story. And you're like, well, how'd they know to do that? Just like Cindy said, but they learned from an early age to those three things: improvising, their situation and their circumstances, adapting to their circumstances, and overcoming their circumstances, like on a level that no human being has ever done.
Right.
That's the appeal, though. That's the journey. That's the journey of this story. It is like the Odyssey in a sense.
I will say too that the biggest piece of information that we ever discovered, which really made all of these stories that I heard, things that I had, discovered outside of the stories, which really kind of all brought it together, was finding out that Mickey Cohen was involved in this. When I came across that FBI document, and I knew that it was Uncle Man, his name was being redacted, that was coming to see Alfred. And then right down below it, Alfred then shares with his cellmate that, Uncle Man tells him that Mickey Cohen is the one who provided them a boat and a contract. And when I found that out, I think I said this once before, I was like, well, who the heck is Mickey Cohen? And as I started digging into who he was, that he was Alcatraz. He was, lived in California. Oh my gosh, that made sense why the brothers went to California, because I used to always, in the back of my mind, even as I heard this story from my mom and other relatives, I mean, we're talking back in, in the 50s. They were, prior to that, we all thought, they're working as in a field as a laborer, making 50 cents an hour. How in the world did they have the money to travel all the way from Ruskin, Florida to Los Angeles, California? Even if they were stealing gas along the way, they can't steal that much gas to make it all the way from Ruskin, Florida to California to Los Angeles and then stay in a house. I mean, where did they get the money for that? I mean, how'd they come up with this address, make it all the way to San Francisco, and then make it all the way back? I mean, that in itself is totally outside the realm of possibilities. I mean, if you were making the kind of money they were making prior to going out there, I mean, there had to be a reason why you went to California. Mm-hmm. And it was to meet with Mickey Cohen.
Yeah.
Later, we would find out, I mean, how in the world would Uncle Man know Mickey Cohen?
He wouldn't.
He wouldn't. I mean, where did he come up with that name? Why would he tell Alfred that Mickey Cohen helped him?
No. And them coming back with the clothes and the money, right. Like where'd they get the money? Where'd they get the clothes? Where'd they get the car? I mean, come on.
That to me is still the most fascinating part, is that connection to Mickey Cohen. That just kind of, and then why did he pick them? Why did he decide on them to do this? What was it about your uncles that really, because it's that whole connection. It's like, getting into, most people are like born into the mob, right. And it's like, right. and it's like a family thing and stuff like that. But the fact that they were introduced to him through Fred Breezy and the whole Fred Breezy connection, neither the three of them had no connection to organized crime from Ruskin, no. Florida. No. It's just like
none whatsoever.
Or, I mean, as far as as far as all the research you had, there's no connection there. The only connection is...
Yeah, the only thing that we know was that they were, according to stories, from my grandfather, and I actually heard this out of his own mouth, that he caught them growing marijuana one time on their farm, on his farm. that they did always get into trouble. They did travel out to California, and when they came back, they were loaded with cash. They were driving, Clarence is driving a new car. John quickly goes out and buys a new car. I mean, I swear, you can look at their pictures of the clothing. They went from wearing, like you said, dungarees and no shirt to wearing these nice suits, and they're dressing like, a gangster type looking guy, patent leather shoes, and totally different. I mean, you can even look at how they dress when they're arrested in Ohio. They're dressed in a nice white suit.
Oh, yeah.
They're not dressed as like someone you just came from the field picking oranges or tomatoes. It's like these are guys that had cash, and they had somewhere they were going, and they were definitely heading. I still believe if they had not gotten caught in Ohio, their next stop would have been in California.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
clearly, he listed his address, his home address as California, and his license plate was registered in California.
Wait, say that again, Mike. We missed the front part.
Clarence, when he checked into the hotel before they got arrested after the bank robbery, he listed his home address as being in California, in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And the registration of the license plate for the car that he had was also registered in California.
Mm.
Yeah, looks like
That's definitely where they were heading.
Yeah, and was the address in Downey the one that we were talking about?
Yes.
And in California.
Yeah.
You really cannot make all this stuff up.
No,
it is really made for a movie.
It is. You can't. That's what I'm saying. It's like natural story points, natural foreshadowing. It's just all there. All the layers and the character development. It's just all there.
Well, hopefully we're going to bring it to the screen.
I hope so.
I
would love to see the story told.
Yep. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I learned a lot of good things today. It's just, it's interesting. That whole leather wallet thing it's not even a wallet.
Well, it was bothering me. I was kept thinking about it, and then people kept asking me questions about it, and I was like, there's something with that wallet and that horse, because that was the one thing that stuck out to me, that was the clue that they knew that they had made it.
It was definitely the clue for Alfred.
Right.
Outside of course, Uncle Man coming to Atlanta and telling him that they had made it.
Yeah.
I believe, he probably knew they had made it. He probably didn't know where they went at that time, but the leather horse picture confirmed to him, along with whatever message was in there, that he knew where they were at.
Well, just last thing, because this whole thing about that note inside that leather thing is really kind of making my mind spin. What do you think they wrote in that letter? And it was probably just a short, I can't imagine it being a long letter. It was just probably just basic info. What do you think they wrote on there?
I never really kind of thought about what they wrote. It probably had to be very short. Could have been, some word that was, the location, could have said whatever that farm was that they had been to before. Could have been a name of the town. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what they told him. And it could have been just some lines. I would have thought that whatever they wrote, they would not have taken a chance that if a guard had said, oh, let's open this up. They pull out a piece of paper and they were able to somehow figure out how to decode it or look at it, that it would have made any sense whatsoever. So, because however they wrote to Alfred when he was in Atlanta and they told him about the escape, clearly they said it in such a way that a guard rereading this letter before Alfred gets it would not have picked up anything strange. It would have been some gibberish. It could have been some lines that they used to draw on items that indicated where they were at or what they were doing. So
crazy.
More codes.
More codes.
More codes.
CIA should have been hiring these guys. They were.
Yes, I agree.
My God, they just picked up all this spycraft just because they could and they knew how to do it. They thought all this stuff through. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys soon.
Enjoyed it.
All right.